here with Natasha, a Reiki practitioner here.
And this is Orion, who is an empathic healer.
So we want to discuss a little bit about what it feels like to be a healer, what the energy feels like to work with. Because the people who don't understand what this world is, it's very visual. There's a lot of imagery we get. And I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to talk about that and describe to the audience sort of what it is we see. So
what it is we do.
What it is we do. So let me ask you, tell me what it feels like to work with Reiki energy. What is it? What do you see? What colors do you see? What energies do you see?
Well, when I open up my channels, I tend to feel a big sort of riverbed of flow. And it flows right through my hands. My business is called Hands of Fire. Typically, my hands get quite hot. And it really depends on what my client or my student is experiencing. That can change the experience that I feel sensationally as well. Something that's quite common right now that I think a lot of us are dealing with is anxiety. And for me, as a Reiki practitioner and someone who's extremely sensitive to energy, what anxiety tends to feel like is a very high vibration. And it's so much so a high vibration that it's almost like it's uprooting us from the earth. So what I tend to feel is this high vibration. It gets more uneasy around the heart, and I feel like the anxiety of the high vibration of the anxiety brings people up into their heads, and that's how we get super heady. I find working on technology is also sort of perpetuating this headiness. So when I start a session and I sort of hone into this sensation of this high vibration, I tend to go right down to the feet and practice sort of channeling and pulling and encouraging this energy to come back to the feet. And for some people, to remind them, like, you are a child of the earth. You deserve to be here. Please, like, stay with us and like, be here. You know, because anxiety can be really hard to deal with, and it's I think a reality that a lot of us experience. So.
Sure, absolutely. I think we've all suffered from time to time.
Yeah.
So when you work on this grounding, what does it look like? What colors do you see? What do you have any imagery that happens with the feet when you're working with it?
Well, imagery happens quite often for me. I'm a very visual person, and that's a lot of the times how my gifts sort of come through. So I'll see images. Sometimes I'll see like an impact injury, and I'll be like, oh, did you have an injury here? Especially with the feet, because the feet are what we walk on. So they tell a lot about what the body has experienced and how the body is currently sort of tiptoeing around things. I mean, in the feet, that's the root chakra system. So sometimes I will see lots of flooding, almost like watercolors flowing over top of like a bowl of water. I'll see like red just start to flow over and wash through, and that'll tell me, okay, so there needs to be some energy moving down towards the root, or the root is asking for energy. But sometimes I'll be at the feet and I'll see different colors, and sometimes that depicts a connection between the root chakra and another chakra. So it could be that there is actually an emotional connection there, or that this person is uprooted because of matters of the heart, because they're not satiating their sacral energy there.
Sure.
Have you ever felt anything?
Oh, absolutely. In body talk therapy, we learned that the right ankle is where we have decision making and anger combining, and it has to do with the meridians in the body. And when someone twists their right ankle, it's because they're having anger over not making a decision. So if you see someone limping down the aisle to their wedding, they're marrying the wrong guy. Okay? And I'm not kidding. And so it's always the right angle, which is anger of decision making. And the knees are about fear, so we get weak in the knees. We hold issues of fear in the knees. And when I'm working with specifically with athletes that are afraid of trying their best, or afraid of a specific team they're playing against, the weakness in the knees shows up as chronic knee pain and anxiety. Also, issues of arthritis. Arthritis is, in body talk, is having the same repetitive thought over and over and over again without variety. And that inability to be flexible in our thoughts and feelings show up in the joints, specifically in the knees and the feet. Also in the fingers too. I guess that's something. And so when you're working with hands, what are your experiences working with people's hands?
I find the hands are such like an emotional pathway for people. I remember I was working with a client, and I just felt this need, like I heard this whisper in my ear, like, just hold this person's hand. And especially the left. When in my work and in my study, the left side of the body is the receiving side, and the right side is the giving side. So I always tend to start on the left side, because I feel like we're in this society where we're constantly giving, and not maybe making enough time for ourselves. So I was holding this student's left hand, and I just felt this huge flow, like right from the heart all the way down the arm, and it was just flowing. Like I opened up a tap. And all of a sudden, my client just started welling and crying and releasing, and it was this beautiful moment, and it all came from that moment where I just held their hand.
Wow. See, so that's similar to Baitak in that we learned Baitak has its roots in Chinese medicine. And the right side is the male side and the left side is the female side. You're saying receptive, but it's also, we call it the female side.
Yeah.
And so issues with women show up on the left side. So if you have problems with your left ankle and your left knee and your left hip and your left shoulder, you got to take a look at the women in your life. Your moms, your sisters, or your own sense of femininity that might be being suppressed. So let's say a woman's working in the corporate world as a man, even though she's a woman, she might have left side issues because she's not fully embracing her femininity. As you said, the receptiveness, because I mean, that's fascinating. And the same things with the male side, the right side. If you're having issues with the right side, fathers, brothers, significant others, husbands, that will show up on that right side. And with people that have been going through anxiety from divorce, I see that a lot. I see that one side is completely shut down based on the gender of the person that they're having trouble with.
Absolutely, yeah.
So have you dealt with people that have been going through divorce or separation and some of the traumas and feelings? How do you feel with your organs? Like what shows up in those?
Well, it's actually really interesting when you were talking about the knees, because as I have learned to sort of communicate with my guides with the energy pathfinding of Reiki, I find that the knees reveal to me matters of the heart, which go in line with what you're saying with fear. Right? So normally the fronts of the knees give off a lot of energy for me about matters of the heart, like what's going on in the heart. And it tends to be divorce, cheating. Right. So matters where it's just like, where trust has been broken, where it's been heart shattering. It's behind the knees, which could be very much aligned with fear, like fear of not being enough, fear of not being loved, fear of not being able to open my heart back up again and trust people. So the knees have been a really interesting point for working with people with divorce or with just major trauma. Solar plexus.
Self-esteem. Right. Sure.
Yeah, self-esteem, self-security and not defining myself by how others see me, and the throat chakra.
Right, having a voice.
I feel like so many people have a hard time actually saying what I want. Like, I remember 2 years ago I started doing this women's circle work, and I remember my partner on one of the first dates we were ever on, he asked me specifically what I wanted, and I remember being irritated. Like, I was actually irritated, like, you know what I want.
Isn't that what you're supposed to ask your partner?
Like, just tell me what I want. Or I'd be that person, no, where do you want to go for lunch? Oh, I don't know, where do you want to go? And it's like, why do I have such a hard time saying what I want? Right. And I think that it's just, we all need to work on our throat chakra. And you know, some of you might be sitting here thinking, oh no, I know Cindy, and Cindy just cannot shut up. And that's another aspect of the throat chakra, which is like, it's overactive, we're oversharing, we're over talking, and not really talking about what needs to be said. And you know what, that interesting, we'll use that hypothetical Cindy, and that those people that talk all the time, they say nothing of worth. For sure. And but what's behind that is incredible need for worth. Listen to me, I'm important, pay attention to me, and the words they're saying is almost garbage. But you have to understand that if you can actually talk with the elephant in the room, no, Cindy, what's really going on with you? Not all the stuff you're telling me. That stuff, I understand it's important, it sounds like it's important, but tell me what's really going on. And she'll say something like, I just want a hug. Right. And I'm just trying so hard to get that hug that I never got when I was 5. And when you understand that's her thing, then you can just go to that person. And what's neat is when you break that boundary, when you go beyond what they present themselves to be, and you go towards who they really are, what they're really wiring towards, you can actually change the relationship where suddenly that person's quiet around you. They can be quiet around you because you know what's really going on with them. And they feel heard and listened to. So that's something interesting that you brought up with that. Well, and I think that that's kind of a big part of being a practitioner. And maybe I shouldn't speak for all practitioners, and I should speak for myself. But, that's okay. For myself, like, I think that's really my goal. Like, that's what I get to bring to the table, is that I'm just here to hold space for people. Like, I'm here to let people feel like they can truly be themselves. Because when I can be myself, I can really be honest with all the aspects of me. I can learn how to love myself and acknowledge the areas that maybe I want to grow and change in. And I feel like that's really where, like, the magic happens on my table, is when we hold space for people through all that crap, take off the masks, and then, you know, we start to get down to the roots of, like, you know, what is it about this situation right now, or this need to share and overshare, and how does that tie back to when Cindy was a little child, and maybe she's the middle child and she always felt like she wasn't heard.
Right.
And when we can just sometimes acknowledge that or give it a name, you know, those are some really, really powerful tools, and this is the way where people can actually rewrite their story. And I've sort of heard you talk about stories as well, and how, like, how our biography can really change our biology.
Oh, for
how
sure.
the stories we carry
Absolutely.
can really affect our physical bodies. Does that tie into any of the work that you do with the brain?
It has a lot to do with belief systems.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go to the brain in a second.
Yeah.
But what you said before is belief systems are absolutely critical. What you believe something is what you take from it, meaning I believe in this idea that most of our events are absolutely neutral. What gives them meaning is what we draw from them. And you can have an event that's a negative, we'll call it a negative event, where something bad happened. And you can say, wow, I really learned something great out of this. I don't ever need to do that again. I don't ever need to have that kind of relationship, or I don't need to have that kind of preventing myself from fully being myself. And you can have a negative experience, as we call it, and have great joy, because you can actually set that aside and not have to do it again. At the same time, you can have a party where someone invites all your friends to a surprise party, and you can be miserable, and yet this is a party for you, and yet you're having the worst time, and it's not the party. So these things that we decide is good and bad, these are ideas. And one thing that I've found is people can go into those experiences and change their ideas about it, change their perceptions of it, see things in a different perspective, and draw different conclusions, different feelings from it, and then the whole thing is changed. And then their self-worth or self-esteem or whatever has been usurped in a negative sense from that experience can change. So that's something I've found. So have you worked on heads? What has been your experience, well, before we go into the concussion work I'm doing, what has been your experience working with heads? We're both Aries, by the way, so we're both head people. So yeah, exactly. So I want to sort of talk about the head, because that's my passion. So tell me about working with the head and what your experience is with Reiki, or with maybe talk about the sound healing you're doing with how we hear sound and how we resonate with the head.
Oh gosh, sound. There's so much there. So when I did a sound resonance healing training with Darren Austin Hall, he's in Toronto and he's a wonderful practitioner.
Awesome.
Yes. We both worked with Darren. He sort of introduced to me tuning forks, singing bowls, chakra chanting, and just sort of like freelance singing. And that sort of opened up the door for me, and I've got lots of workshops in the back of my mind for that, but I started bringing that into my healing sessions, and I work with tuning forks now. And sometimes if I don't have my tuning forks available to me, or they're not simply in that room, you know, I've started to recognize different frequencies, or I'll just hear a frequency in my mind, and so I'll be working on maybe the heart chakra or the solar plexus, and I can feel that there's some sort of like an energetic imbalance, and so I just want to go, ooh, and like just now, like even myself, like I can really feel like the energy in the room change, and it's just, you know, it's kind of like physics. Well, it is physics.
It is physics.
We have this down to a science. We understand the impact of vibration on us. We have developed sound therapy and sound healing.
In my background in martial arts, we did Qigong, and we did sound Qigong, and we would focus on chakras with specific positionings and specific organs, and we would focus on tuning from that, and we'd actually sing those organs, and it would actually be it actually sounded terrible in a group, because everyone would have a totally different pitch,
right.
But it wasn't about the pitch and the sound and coordinating that, but the energy, but you would sing a gallbladder, and it'd be, and it would change as you're tuning into that frequency.
Yes.
And that gallbladder would actually shift itself in its consciousness and change your vocal pattern.
Yes.
It would change your tuning. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've had a little experience with that, not as much as you. So tell me about now, for those who don't know, I met Natasha on a boat cruise, and it was called Soul Movement Boat Cruise this year. And I had a bad back. I had a terrible back, and I pride myself having a really healthy body, but I really needed help, and so I employed her to work on my back, and she said, I'm going to use tuning forks. And so she sort of opened my back, and she hit the tuning fork and placed it on different parts of my back. And I'm just curious on what she was doing. So hopefully here she can describe what is it that you're actually doing with the tuning forks on the spine and those meridians inside. I'm guessing that's where you're going.
Yeah, well, I have some tuning forks, so I'll just show you here. So I have I work with two different kinds of tuning forks. So this is just a regular tuning fork. You'll see some musicians use this. It has a specific audible frequency that, you know, I can wave around you or around a space and clear it. And then I have this tuning fork, which is the same. It does have an audible sound when I put it up towards your ear, but then it also has these weights here. And these weights, they don't change the frequency of this tuning fork, but it does magnify the vibration that it has. So this is a tuning fork in alignment with the root chakra. It's 99 hertz. And so when I actually put this onto, so you can hear this sound.
Sure.
And then I'll actually
It's a
put
low
this,
pitch, by the way.
Yes, I'll put this onto a specific body part, which
Wow.
is what I would have done.
So it's
on
a
my
direct
table.
frequency, direct currents.
Exactly, and this is kind of like the neck. We don't want to hold up here, that will stop the vibration, but if I hold up here, that powerful vibration is now going into a very specific direct point, and that's exactly what I did in your back. So specifically, I remember your erectors being very, very tight, and so I placed that there, and these frequencies, this is a lower frequency.